What's good, my boy? It's been a while since I came on here and just made one of these simple videos. Been really into doing lectures and stuff like that on the live stream, and I'm probably going to develop some sort of more consistent routine with that. But today, since it's been so long since I came on here, I wanted to just talk about something simple, and that is the concepts of putting up blinders, uh, understanding certain ideas and concepts universally so you don't put these blinders on. I want to talk a little bit about nihilism and certain refuges we take because of it. I'm a firm believer that nihilism in particular is the opiate of the masses today. Now, I made a video a while back, like almost probably a year now, about nihilism, and it was a lot of people that watched it didn't like my definition. So quickly before we get into it, I'm going to actually read from Webster himself the definition for nihilism. And he defines it, or they, I don't know who actually does the Webster's dictionary, but they define it as a viewpoint that traditional values and beliefs are unfounded and that existence is senseless and useless. They go a little bit further on that definition to say that it is a doctrine that denies any objective ground of truth, and especially that of moral truths. Then there's a second definition that it is a doctrine or belief that conditions in the social organization are so bad as to make destruction desirable for its own sake, independent of any constructive program or responsibility or possibility. So there's three major takeaways from that definition. All right. The first is the denial of the value of tradition, the denial of objective truth and objective morality, and thirdly, and probably most importantly, the idea that the system that we are in is beyond repair, beyond any sort of idealistic change, and that revolution or anarchy is the only possible way around it. Now, I could go off on some form of tangent and explain the history of nihilism, but first I want to say that I wasn't wrong in my definition in the past. I was very much uneducated on many different things around it, but nihilism comes from the Latin word nihil, which means nothing, and that's how I defined it in the past. But what I said in the past was that it's the belief that nothing matters, right? And that really is the best way to sum it up, is that nothing matters. Not that, there's nothing here that matters at all. No, it means that the concept of nothing is the point of focus. And that revolutionary aspect of nihilism is very important as well. Where does this come from? Really, it comes from the Enlightenment about 300 years ago, where all these people started questioning things. Lots of philosophers, many identified as the skeptics, started questioning everything, and it's where we got the movement from Christianity as the main perspective towards empiricism, which that is basically the observable world around us. What we can see in that is the only proofs that we can have for beliefs. Okay? And I could list off philosophers and all this stuff, but it wouldn't really make a difference. Just understand that in the 1700s, there was lots of revolutions. You have the American Revolution. You have the French Revolution. And I'm not going to get super political into the weeds because I want to keep this simple. But this is really, and you could even go back further into the Protestant Reformation or Protestant Revolution. You could go back to the Copernican Revolution, all these different things, right? Just think that there was lots of revolutions. This idea of nihilism that says that the system is so bad that you need to revolt and destroy it and rebuild anew. This is a very old idea. This is a very, very old idea, but it is adopted like none other today. In many forms, in very simple forms. Many people will espouse that there is no such thing as a moral truth. Many people will espouse that the government, politics, all these things are fake and gay. Many people will espouse all this different stuff, that there is no truth. We got to come up with our own set of beliefs. This is liberty. This is freedom in this worldview. This is what a lot of these revolutions were built upon, was that we're doing this for freedom and liberty. But what they don't tell you is that from this will stem everybody formatting their own thing. You get lots of this idea of cults, this idea of sects and denominations. All of these things, you can trace them back into ancient Rome, where they basically encouraged the idea of a cult in a sect. But all these things kind of question authority. They question these things, and they do it in the name of freedom and liberty. But what they don't realize is that they question themselves out of truth. They question themselves out of order, and then it just becomes chaos. And you have to really ask yourself, well, what is the better system? And that's not what we're going to get into today, but I just wanted to go on that little tangent to define nihilism, okay? I think it is, and as many others think, the opiate of the masses. Many people you see, if you go online, if you go to a bookstore, these figures who have amassed crazy amounts of wealth, I'm talking upwards to billions of dollars, telling people to clean their room, telling people to go for a run, and everything in between that you could think of as ways to improve their situation, to improve their life, right? I got really sucked into this crowd several years ago, and there was some positives. I lost over 100 pounds. I got on track with a lot of things. I discovered what I really wanted to do in terms of vocation, all of these things, lots of good. But what happened is I started to seek refuge in this. Refuge from what? Refuge from the nihilism. Refuge from these philosophies that basically say that there is no truth, there is no meaning. It's what you make it. I could make an hour video listing all sorts of books that are extremely popular, all sorts of films, all sorts of figures who espouse these ideas. But it's not necessary, because everyone kind of understands it, and this is why they put these blinders on and why they seek refuge in something. The refuges that I talk about could be anything from the Hank Williams Jr. album and a six-pack of beer, to you and your buddies at the bar, to a video game, to some form of a relationship, whether that be, again, hanging out with your friends, or a girlfriend that you just spend all of your time and put all of your time into, most of the time that don't really result in anything. No children, no anything, just wasted time. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Binge watching movies. All these different things that we all know about are refuges from this nihilism. The people who try to give you anecdotes to this, the self-improvement, self-help figures online themselves, if you get wrapped up in these circles, you'll find millions of people seeking refuge with blinders to any sort of exterior things, just feeding off of these things as the truth. Remember, we've adopted in a mass scale, a zeitgeist, if you will, the idea that there's no objective truth or morality, that the only way we form these things is by what was in the Constitution, what is in our laws, and all of this is up to change. All these different things, right? Now, for me, the way I see it is that I will label these things transcendent thirds. If I'm in a relationship, me and a buddy, right? Me and a girl, you can sit there and just stare at the wall together, but it gets boring pretty quick. Even conversation, if it's very baseline, how's the weather, how's this, like small talk, these things become boring. So what do we incorporate? We incorporate transcendent thirds, whether that be just think of this as an interest. Think sports and talking about sports with your friend. That would be a transcendent third in the relationship. Think some sort of fandom or fan club in some sort of thing, whether, I don't know, Star Wars or Marvel or whatever people things people like. Think some sort of video game. Think some sort of art form. Our hobby. Communities within these hobbies. These are transcendent thirds that people seek refuge in from this zeitgeist of today of nihilism. Now, in the past, the transcendent third was God. That was the baseline transcendent third that went against the grain of nihilism. It was that order is good, order brings freedom, order, objective truth, all of these things are what sets you free. It is the foundation upon which everything is built. But nowadays, there is no foundation. It's been crumbled away. And it's a death by 1,000 cuts. I think where I went wrong in the past is I labeled nihilism in the mass indoctrination of it. I labeled it as, it's because of satire, and it's because these little things that have been incorporated into culture over time, it's from these conspiracies coming to light as being true. Corruption in the system coming to light, if you will. MK Ultra, Epstein, COVID, all these different things. But in reality, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. It stems from all of that revolutionary thought like 300 years ago. But it even goes back further, like I mentioned with the Roman in ancient Rome, where you had all these cults and sects pop up with all these different beliefs. And what does that do but question truth? I mean, if everyone's saying different things, that just questions the truth. And this can get very binary. So I'm not going to talk super in depth. But, I mean, there's no way around it. It doesn't really matter how it came to be. It is here. This just overwhelming force of nihilism. So, for me, the way I see to get around it, first and foremost, is a reintroduction of religion, a re-education, a redoing of the education system that we have. I did a long talk about this in a live stream a couple days ago, But I would point anybody in the direction of John Taylor Gatto if you want to really understand how messed up the system is. But all you have to know how messed up the system is by just understanding propaganda. And we all know what that is. Whatever side of the political coin you're on, you are familiar with the other side using some form of propaganda. And especially in the schools, taking certain things and ideas out of the schools, basically teaching the kids from a young age that there is no truth, there is no objective morality, all these things. It's crazy. And the biggest, easiest way to disprove someone who's like, no, dude, there is no objective morality, it's either, it can be right, it can be wrong, is to just, while they're spouting this nonsense, just ask them, is it bad if someone in any country around the world, take your pick, rapes a 2-year-old baby to death, or chains up children in their basement and tortures them by any means? Is it evil for the cartel to cut someone's face off and put a mirror in front of them and make them watch? For, I don't know, telling on them to the police? Like any of these things, just ask them, are these evil? And, I mean, if they're a normal person, any of them will say, oh, yeah, that is kind of evil. Well, how can you say that that's wrong if you're saying there's no objective truth? You got to claim as well that it may be right, and it becomes a contradiction. But that's not what this is about. There is very simple ways to combat this nihilism. Within these communities online, you get what I like to consider universal concepts. As much as he's become a meme, someone like Jordan Peterson, right? He's real famous for telling people to make their beds. But in this modern world, that is probably one of the best, besides preaching the gospel to them, which most people aren't receptive. You've kind of got to prime them for these things because they've been brainwashed so heavily. That is the best starting ground. Teach them to build a routine. Teach them to not see a routine as a prison, but to see a routine as a perfect day. Like if I asked you right now, what would be your perfect day? And then teach them to kind of see it through a romantic lens, to see the idea of this as almost like these mini rituals throughout your day, of like your little morning routines. Everyone has these for the most part, even if they don't have a concrete routine. But the best and the easiest way out of these things is not to go off the extreme and go run a 100-mile marathon, but it's to start small with organizing your time, right? Time is the most mystical thing to us. People don't understand it. Us Christians have an explanation for it, but for the masses, for all the people, the nihilists and the New Agers and all of these religious people that are spiritual but not religious, that is the religion of the future, all of these people, they conceptualize it, but they don't understand that it is mysterious. It is this weird force, and the only way to tame it, it is the most important thing, the most important force out there in terms of like what you have at your disposal. Once it runs out, you're done, okay? It's the most precious resource. And the best way to tame it is through the idea of a routine, through breaking your day up by the hours and ascribing things to them. Not just writing some little list, but to actually look at 16 boxes or 16 slots that you can insert certain things into it. As well as Jordan Peterson's whole idea of clean your room, right? That's a very good thing. I mean, if you are so into nihilism and depression is not a synonymous thing, okay? These are very different concepts. I should have brought that up in the beginning of my video, but these are different concepts. They breed depression can be bred from nihilism, it usually is, but they are distinct concepts. But if you're trapped up to the point where you are in a state of depression, the easiest way out of that is to start with baby steps like cleaning your room. And then you can work your way up from there. You can start, what I did is I went from like, Jordan Peterson was like way too complex in terms of his vernacular for me in the beginning. So what I did was I started with baby steps. I wanted to improve, so I built a routine where I started going to the gym. I had some form of small little thing that I started with before even that, where I was like 30 minutes of physical exercise, right, at a particular time every day. And then the next thing I incorporated was there was like ideas that I wanted to understand. I wanted to gain knowledge. So I incorporated an hour of reading every day, and it started small. It started with like these very simple self-improvement books to the point now where over multiple years of work in this field, I'm reading texts in Latin, and it's like one of the most fun things for me to do is to do research in these into different things. But you start off small with these things, and then you go up from there. And there's all sorts of figures, and this is where the blinders part comes in. Whenever you're trying to climb out of this nihilism, from what I've found, the best thing to avoid getting into these like rabbit holes that you don't come out of is to have some sort of concrete foundation, like a religion, especially something like Catholicism. Why? Why would I, besides me believing it to be true, why would I prescribe this to somebody? Over the last, like, let's just say 70 years, this nihilism has been growing. And before the internet, it was very hard to discern. That's why when the internet was in its beginnings, before social media really kicked off, like 2010, the biggest movement at that time was the new atheist movement. All these atheists like Dawkins and Hitchens were extremely popular because the internet still hadn't kind of developed in its own to discern those things out completely. And they still have a good amount of a hold today. But, like, let's just say back in the 80s, before there was the internet, where you could Google concepts to find proofs and argumentations against them, you might watch a movie or read a book or listen to an idea or something like that and be stuck in it for 20 years. Complete blinders. But now we have the ability to kind of, with the internet, this phone, it's like a sift or like a colander that you put this truth or whatever you put information into, and through this colander, you can arrive at truth on the other side. So the amount of time spent in this blinded state is a lot shorter. And it's even further shortened if you get into something like Catholicism. But a lot of people, this is very hard, this is very foreign because of the indoctrination of the schooling, of this nihilism, all these different things. But that, and then again, those universal concepts can be used at so many points, because it's not like once you discover these things that everything's better. This is why one of the reasons why I love Christianity so much is the concept of sin it perfectly explains the world. It's like you're going to constantly be falling. Our goal in life is to achieve sanctification and to aspire to be saints, complete purification through a series of tests. But we will constantly fall over and over and over. And there's a whole metaphysical narrative to it of the garden, right? The Garden of Eden, the fruit, all of that. That is the explanation for why we do this. But whenever you don't have any of these metaphysical concepts in your head, which metaphysics is just like anything beyond physics, like how physics is interacting with the physical material world, metaphysics is beyond it. It's concepts. It's the concepts of mathematics. It's the concepts of logic. These things that are not tangible, that we do not see with our eye, but are conceptual in our brain. These are metaphysics. And the reason why religion is so important today is that with nihilism, there is no objective concepts. Anything you adopt that does not have some sort of justification at the bottom of it for why things stem out from it within Christianity would be God, right? You can be swayed extremely easily, and then it develops on its own, whatever belief you're in, whether it be New Age. It's so subjective that it becomes nihilism. It becomes, I'm just believing in this truth because it's kind of practical for me, and that does not hold up. But within this idea of actually having these systems in your mind as an understanding of how things work, you cannot get any more coherent. A lot of people try to make religion out to be woo-woo, out to be the kind of the ridiculous position to have. But the more ridiculous position to have is to try to interact within this complex, chaotic world. I mean, the world is in utter turmoil. We're about to go to war with Iran, using the same, to show how stupid people are, using the same tactics of 9/11, of these weapons of mass destruction. We're about to go back to war with Iran. We have systems that promote just complete degeneracy. All these things that people are aware of, even if they're not religious. And but people are swimming in the water without a life vest. Metaphysics gives you a life vest to swim and to understand these things and to see them as coherent without, and this is the thing that combats that nihilism. That nihilism wants to tell you, oh no, there is no truth. There is no objective morals. There is no ethics. There is no things. It's just like one person will arise, and the best one, the person who has like the best ideas, will find him through the weeds, and he'll be the savior. That's like the best you have in that camp. That's the Nietzschean idea. That's the best you have in that camp, is that some human savior will come and arise with all of this rhetoric and all of this genius ideas, the religion of geniosity, the religion of like, oh, this guy's a genius, bro, he came up with all these concepts. And then you'll pedestalize him to the surface, and his ideas will reshape the world. It's kind of how you get into Marxist ideology, where it's like this one guy came up with this whole system, and it just like kind of screwed up the whole world forever, to the point where we have all these examples of it failing, but they're so attached to this idea of a human, of like a 100% human savior, that they can't let go of these ideas. I mean, all this stuff is complicated, but it's really not. It's really not. Whenever you just look at nihilism, when you see it through this lens of like nihilism, the rejection of, or even you could say the existentialist people, the rejection of metaphysics, the destruction of metaphysics during the Enlightenment period, and how that is really how we are today. And then you have the education system's corruption with the Prussian model. I mean, again, go look up John Taylor Gatto. He has like phenomenal stuff that basically everyone knows, whether you're a liberal or a conservative or anything, that school sucks nowadays. The school system sucks. It's terrible. And I did that whole video about that. But these simple ideas, like if you are in the depths of nihilism, right? Or you are just bouncing back and forth from refuge to refuge, whether it be drugs, whether it be just trying to like have as much sex as possible, whether it is you're just numbing yourself with a video game, you're just playing it like as much as you possibly can, trying to avoid the nihil, the nothing. These simple concepts, these universal concepts from some of these self-improvement figures, like David Goggins, like Jordan Peterson, like some of the things Joe Rogan says. I'm trying to think of them off the top. There's a new one that pops up every week, and I'm not mentioning the scammy ones, but I'm talking about the ones that actually like have a little bit of substance. I can't stand Jordan Peterson because after all the reading I've done, all his philosophy past that super simple self-help stuff is just like repackaged Carl Jung, and it's just like Gnostic, and I don't care too much for it. Same thing with someone like David Goggins. It is very good for getting yourself out of nihilism, but it is not the best for longevity. It gives you a springboard out, but it doesn't give you a direction because it's just a template. That's what all these things are templates. That's why I say they're universal concepts. They're universal in the sense that the message is simple enough that you can plug in any of, and I don't think they would disagree with this either, but they're simple enough where you can plug in your own unique circumstances into these things, and then you build from there. But still, they don't give you a concrete metaphysical system. They just don't. And it's a two-part thing. It's a practicality that you need to build with, like I said, the routines, plugging in things that you actually are interested in, growing in, and that other side of the metaphysics of developing this narrative. And yeah. It is the most important thing of our day, is to understand what I just laid out. To understand that this is, you hear all these corny things of like, it's a spiritual war, like the Fight Club shit. It's a spiritual war, it's not a physical war anymore. That's true. They don't, all these people that spout this, they don't ever give the right answer. It's not, like they always take that second definition of nihilism, like the revolution. They don't realize that that is a permanent regress. That is just a death spiral you get into if you don't actually fix the metaphysics, the belief. Like even if you think Christianity is wrong or fake or not a good belief, you cannot argue that something like Catholicism, with all the councils, all the dogmas, all the doctrines, is the most concrete in terms of a universal belief system that has ever been seen by humans. Like, it is insane. All the paganism, there's no concrete tradition within it that you can follow and build up. It's all subjective and spider-webbed out. The Buddhist stuff, it doesn't give you that metaphysic. It basically just says everything's an illusion. That's why it's adopted so much by the Sam Harris atheist people. Other things, polytheistic religions, what I'm talking about here, the metaphysic, is just not there. And then you get into the New Age stuff, and it has the same problems as all those other ones do. So I didn't mean for this to be like a, however long this video is, just like preaching session towards Christianity, but I mean, This is something that we really must recognize. This is why you see so many people online coming towards the faith nowadays. And this is the last thing I'll leave you with. I might use big words. I might lecture through like these textbook type things and like really complex stuff. But just like nihilism can be defined extremely complex, the origination of it, all of these things can be defined in a super complicated way. Humans have intuition, and we intuitively pick up on these things. Just like I can sit for hours and describe all these dogmas and doctrines of the Catholic Church that make it right and argue for it using philosophy and all these different things, people come to Christ just through the gospel message, just through divine faith. They come to it in that regard, in a simple way. Because we have intuition, we actually have a universal thing that drives our choices and desires. Right? Within the faith, we believe we're made in the image of God. So we have certain qualities. We have a long-term goal to participate in the natures of the Trinity. And that gets real complicated. You can look up theosis if you want like a really beautiful explanation of the end goal of Christianity. But we have certain aspects like creativity, a universal thing. It's not like we're all God, bro. It's not that stuff. It is just a shared nature between us with that, where we pick up on these things. We pick up on the zeitgeist. Carl Jung gets real weird and wacky with this when he talks about his collective unconsciousness. And you don't have to go that far into all of that to just understand zeitgeist, which basically is German for spirit of the times. It's the universal spirit. And I'm going to make a video about this because it's pretty interesting. But one way to think about the zeitgeist is think about when we had guns versus when we only had swords. There's a switch in the psyche that happens in a world where there's only swords, where combat is more common, it's very personal, it's a little bit more brutal, versus when everybody's got a gun and it doesn't take much skill to kill somebody. You just got like that was easy button method of killing someone. And you compare these two things, there's a big difference in, or even think about the zeitgeist of people without cell phones versus after cell phones with all the social media. There is a difference. Same thing with the modern zeitgeist of nihilism. People pick up on it. They don't need the definitions. They don't need anything. What do they say? What do the masses say? Without getting into all these complicated definitions. Say, oh, everything seems like it's just fake and gay now. They say, man, a lot of people are depressed. They say all these things, okay? Same thing with understanding the beauty of Christianity. They don't all have to read these big texts and tomes or listen to a bunch of debates. They can hear the gospel presented in a specific way. I'm a Catholic. I think Protestants are wrong. But if you see, there's this one guy, Cliff Knettle, that goes around these campuses, and he has a very simplistic apologetic approach. Okay, that's just like debating his position. He has a very simple approach, but through this intuition, a lot of people pick up on it, and you see a lot of people coming to the faith. It is very important, especially in today, to combat this religion of the future. I'm going to be making several different videos kind of tied towards the propaganda, exposing it. A couple good channels you can look for is Jay Dyer. His is pretty good. There's several that decode what's going on nowadays, right? And that's really all. Just know that simple messages can be universally can be good. They don't all have to be corny and cringy and everything. That idea of labeling everything as corny and cringy comes from that nihilism. So anyway, boys, have a good one. Probably gonna do a live stream soon. Again, get on that schedule, and yeah, peace out.